David Sirota reporting at IB Times has a great story about addition to the tax bill at the last minute that was not in either the House or the Senate version. So David also reports for the Young Turks. He's a contributor for us. He's done some videos you can see on youtube.com/theyoungturks, and TYT investigates about this issue. And we'll have the links in the description box below. So, but first, let me explain the context. In order for a bill to get passed, as you guys know, the House passes one version, the Senate passes another, and then they have to reconcile those two versions, and they come up with one joint version, and then they all vote on it again to make sure that they're passing the same exact bill. So when they go to reconcile the bill, sometimes things that are not in either version pop up. And there's usually a very, very good reason for that, because they needed it to get a vote, or they needed it to make some lobbyist or donor happy. In this case, probably a little bit of all of the above, but there's one critical vote here. That's Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. He's the guy who spoke out, some would argue bravely, against Donald Trump, saying he questions his mental fitness for the office. Now, Corker is deeply right-wing Republican from Tennessee, and so that had more credibility to that. And he actually said that he would vote against the tax bill because it creates about a $1.5 trillion deficit. And then all of a sudden, after the two sides meet, the Senate and the House, and they have a new bill with a new provision, guess what? Senator Bob Corker is going to vote for it. Now, here on the Young Turks, I've told you all along that he was going to vote for it, and that almost all of the Republicans are going to vote for this tax cut bill. If they decide at the last second to let one of them vote against it or not be present, it's not important, but it will definitely pass. And all the people who pretended to have objections to it will all vote for it, and that is exactly what is happening. But in the case of Corker, it might be a little bit more personal. What do they have to put in there to entice him to switch his vote? Because it still creates a $1.5 trillion deficit. What he claimed he cared about has not been resolved at all, So that's definitely not the reason. So let's try to find out what is. So here's Sirota at International Business Times. He says the new provision was not in the bill passed by the House or the Senate. Instead, it was inserted into the final bill during reconciliation negotiations between Republicans from both chambers. The provision, said experts, would offer a special tax cut to LLCs with few employees and large amounts of depreciable property assets, namely buildings, rent-generating apartment and office buildings. Now you might be thinking, there's a guy I know that might have that apply to him, and it ain't Bob Corker. The guy you know is Trump, and you are right about that. In fact, it's a little bit broader than that. But it also affects Bob Corker, so let's dive more into the details. The new bill still has the same income provision, they explained, but adds a loophole, depreciable property. So instead of being able to get a large tax cut only if you pay a lot of wages, now you can get the tax cut if you own a lot of property. So there's 1,000 wonderful Christmas gifts for corporations and rich people in this Republican tax bill. And they already had one specially gift wrapped for the rich already. But then they decided in this reconciliation to add an extra loophole to say, hey, you know what? Look, if you're making a lot of money, we're already giving you giant tax cuts. But in this case, if you have a lot of property, but you're depreciating the property so it doesn't seem like you have a lot of income, well, you know what? We're going to give you an extra loophole. Now, let's find out who that might affect. As David Kamen, NYU law professor, explains, quote, this helps people who have held property for a while, like Donald Trump. Of course! The other family that it helps a lot is the Kushners. They're in a very similar situation. Not just Jared Kushner, but his entire family, his father, his other parts of the family that are in the real estate business. So the Trumps are helped personally. Oh, he's gonna love that. They sneak it in at the last minute. The Kushners are helped tremendously, but that's not all. IB Times previously reported that 13 GOP lawmakers directly sculpting the bill, including US House Speaker Paul Ryan, have between 36 million and 163 million worth of ownership stakes in real estate related LLCs. Those entities generated between 2.6 million and 16 million in quote unquote pass-through income and could benefit from the new provision. So isn't this convenient? the Republicans decide, hey, you know what, we're gonna make Trump a little richer and his son-in-law's family as well. But what a lucky break, it also makes us richer. Yes, it's millionaires giving themselves extra loopholes in tax. So remember that this was supposed to be not tax cuts, but tax reform, they said, because even though they were giving giant tax cuts to corporations, they were gonna take away loopholes. No, they added loopholes. And it is not reform at all, it is just a giant giveaway to folks like this, okay? So now, but what about Corker? What about Bob? Well, let's get to Bob. Senator Bob Corker, who was considered a potential no vote on the bill, abruptly switched his position upon the release of the final legislation. Federal records reviewed by IBT show that Corker has millions of dollars of ownership stakes in real estate related LLCs that could also benefit. And then all of a sudden, Bob Corker votes yes on the bill instead of no. What a wild coincidence. I'm sure that it had nothing to do with getting him millions of dollars. Nothing at all. Well, did they address the deficit, what he claimed to care about? Not 1%, not at all, not at all. Why did you switch your vote? I don't know. Well, they actually asked him. This is great reporting. So they got him on the phone. And before I tell you about that, let me give you a sense of how much all these folks stand to gain. Federal records reviewed by IBT show Corker, a commercial real estate mogul, made up to $7 million last year from such income. So you avoid taxes to a greater extent on that amount of money, soon that's gonna add up. So that's a ton of money that he's saving. How about Trump? President Donald Trump's financial disclosures listed between 41 million and 68 million of the same income. So they are gonna gain an unreal amount of literal money in their pockets, not campaign contributions. Once those tax cuts go into effect, Bob Corker gets way richer, so does Donald Trump, so do the Kushners. Okay, so do 13 other Republicans that crafted this legislation. Okay, so they call up Corker and they ask him about it. They explain the provision and he says, now if I understand what the provision does, it sounds totally unnecessary and borderline ridiculous. Oh, that's great, we appreciate that. So well, then in that case, I guess Corker will switch to a no vote because he didn't know it was in there, and I'm glad to hear his honesty. That's wonderful. Oh, it didn't end there. Corker's office calls back and then says this. I don't really know what the provision does, to be honest. I would need an accountant to explain it. I had no knowledge of this and would have no knowledge of it except for you guys are calling me about it. I have no idea whatsoever whether it impacts me or doesn't impact me. In other words, backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. It's no longer ridiculous. It's probably totally fine. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it sounds great. Are you voting no instead of no, I'm gonna vote yes. But nothing changed except this provision. In essence, especially in regards to what you claimed you cared about. I don't know what it is, but I'm still voting yes. Okay, one more piece of clarity which did not help at all. Corker said, I had like a 2-page summary I went through with leadership. I never saw the actual text. Wait a minute. These are the same Republicans who said about Obamacare, they didn't even read the bill. By the way, they had a year to debate that legislation. This one rammed through in the middle of the night on a Friday night. And even Corker goes, I didn't read it. I mean, I switched from a no vote to a yes vote based on a 2-page summary. What happened? I thought you guys wanted to read every bill. You wanted to read every line. He hasn't even read it. So his main excuse for voting yes is, I don't know what's in the bill. Now look, if he was always gonna vote yes, it wouldn't matter less, because at least he's not being a hypocrite or change his position. It'd still be a terrible vote, but he's saying that he switched his vote, but he doesn't know why, because he didn't read the bill. Okay, to say that stretches belief and imagination is to state a tremendous understatement. Okay, so now, John Cornyn, who's part of the folks that are shepherding this bill through, is on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They saw the IB Times reporting on this, and so they're gonna ask him about, hey, how about this provision, and were you guys trying to get extra votes like Corkers? Let's listen carefully to Cornyn's answer.
everybody in every tax bracket will see a tax cut. So picking out one piece in a 1,000-page bill and saying, well, this is going to benefit somebody, I just think takes the whole bill out of context.
Well, but except that this provision wasn't included either the House or the Senate bill. It apparently was added at the last minute. Why was that done? Why was it necessary to include that provision?
Well, we were working very hard. It was a very intense process. As I said, the Democrats didn't refuse to participate. And what we've tried to do is cobble together the votes we needed to get this bill passed, at the same time maintaining the integrity of the largest tax cuts we're going to be seeing since 1986.
So is that how you got Senator Corker with this provision?
Well, the particular provision you're talking about, honestly, is just one piece of a 1,000-page bill, which is going to grow the American economy.
Well, we needed to cobble together the votes. Well, there were only a couple of outstanding votes. They're not trying to get Democratic votes at all. So the only people that were at issue were people like Susan Collins, Marco Rubio, and Bob Corker. And Collins and Rubio had already said yes. So the last remaining no vote was Corker. And all of a sudden, he gets a provision that makes him a ton of money, which he claims, oh golly gee, I don't know anything about that. And he switches his vote. And there's Cornyn admitting we had to cobble together the votes. That means, yes, we put stuff into that bill in reconciliation that was not in there before for the specific purpose of getting those votes. Well, if you didn't know the level of corruption in Washington, you know it now. So when I tell you that watch out for guys like Bob Corker and Jeff Flake and all these people who are bravely standing up to Donald Trump and then who go and vote with him just to make themselves and their donors richer, that's what I mean. They don't have any actual principles. This is all about getting themselves and their friends completely and utterly rich, and then a little bit beyond that. And so they might have some objections to Donald Trump, but it doesn't have anything to do with the substance. They all agree on the substance, which is redistribute the wealth to the top, and particularly to them. If you want to get the whole Young Turks show every single day, become a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And once you do, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
Or you might say,
I think it's weird.
Or you might say,
oops.
No, that won't be that one. It won't be that one. It'll be great, trust me. tytnetwork.com/join.